Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you for tuning into the show today. We have a great show lined up. We're going to be speaking with Ahmed Osman about the lost city of Exodus. But don't forget that Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, psychic readings, and energy healing. So if there's stuff going on in your life, problem at work, problem with your health, problem with your relationship, give me a call, drop me a line, send me an email, and we can set up a time for a private consultation in person, over the phone, or via Skype. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading their free 50-page Jumpstart Your Intuition Guide at www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. And if you've missed an episode of Just Energy Radio, don't forget that you can listen to all of our archives by going to the Just Energy Radio webpage. That's www.justenergyradio.com. Going to our YouTube channel, Just Energy Radio on YouTube, or you can come here to the Inception Radio Network. Now, if you do go to the Just Energy Radio page, sign up for our weekly newsletter, which will keep you informed of all of our upcoming guests. And if you do stop by our YouTube page, please subscribe to the channel, because we would just love to know that you're here supporting us. Let's see. I'm just trying to think if there's any announcements. April. Well, the month did start with an A. August 16th and 17th is the Golden Age Conference being held in St. Louis, Missouri. I'll be there speaking about the Golden Age in antiquity. For more information about that, you can go to soulhealer.com, www.soulhealer.com, where we have information about that event. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest and get him on the air. Ahmed Osman is an Egyptologist who was born in Cairo in 1934. He has been living in London since 1965. He studied law at Ain Shams University and worked as a journalist. In his work, he has set out to demonstrate that the roots of Western religious belief lie not in the land of Palestine, but in Egypt. Wah, wah. Well, this is going to be an interesting conversation, so please welcome to Just Energy Radio the author of The Lost City of Exodus, Ahmed Osman. Hi, Ahmed. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Rita. I'm all right. I'm waiting to talk to you.
Well, I am just very excited to have you on the show. I went through your book, and we're going to have a very interesting conversation. I thought some of the conclusions that you came to were new. I want to say revolutionary, and I give you credit for putting them out there. And we'll share all of those little secrets with the listeners as this 2-hour period unfolds. But to begin, one of the things that I like to do with guests that I've never had on the show before is to just get a little bit of their history, who they are, where they've come from, how they've got interested in exploring, their topic of interest. And for you, it would be exploring the history of Egypt and its ties to contemporary religions.
To tell you the truth, in the beginning, I was a little boy when the state of Israel was declared in 1948. At the time, I was 14 years of age, and I was a little bit a member, although I was a young boy, of the fanatic Muslim Brotherhood, and they said they would like to fight to stop the Jews making their country, independent country in Palestine. And if we, they asked people to join for fighting and so on. They said, you have nothing to lose. There are two options, either to defeat the enemies of God or to die and be a martyr and go to paradise. So at the time, I thought there's nothing for me to lose. I would like to fight, you see. And I wanted to join for those young boys going for war. Luckily for me at the time, I was underage, 14 years old. They didn't accept me for my age. Now, by the time, a new war, we know that in 1948, then the Egyptian army went on with the other Arab armies, and they were defeated, and the Israelis were able to establish their country. By the time another war was coming, I had grown up, and I left the Brotherhood, and I wanted to know really, what is it all for? Why are we fighting? If the Jews saying they're coming back to their home of their ancestor, and they want to, unlike the British occupation in Egypt, the British, we wanted them out because they were occupying a country, have no right to stay there for all. But the Israelis, the Jews, were claiming that they're coming home. They were home. They are not occupying Palestine. They were coming home. So I wanted to know really what's going on. Why are they asking to go back to Palestine? Coming from Russia, from Germany, from other parts of Europe. And why are we not able to sit down and talk to them rather than fight all the time without coming to a conclusion? So I thought it must have we have a kind of a taboo which stops us talking to each other and understanding what's going on, and it must have its roots in the common past, in the origin, in the roots of the conflict. And I soon realized, started to read the Bible. Muslims usually don't read the Bible, so I got a copy of the Old Testament and I started reading it, the book of Genesis, the book of Exodus, and so on. And I realized these were originally the origin of the whole situation when the tribe of Israel followed Joseph, their son, into Egypt, and they stayed there for some time. Moses was born in Egypt, and he was grown up in the royal palace of Pharaoh. And then eventually, when he went to Sinai when he escaped for Sinai for some time, he came back and demanded that Pharaoh should let the Israelites go. And after some kind of miraculous punishment events, he led the Israelites out. Moses got the Torah, given to him on Mount Sinai in Egypt. So these people came as a tribe, as a small tribe, but because of the connection, Joseph's connection and Moses' connection with the pharaonic royal palace, they became important people. And they left Egypt as a nation. They came as a tribe, insignificant tribe. They went out as a nation, Whatever happened happened in Egypt. I mean, they were born in Egypt. The Israeli religion, the Mosaic religion, was established in Egypt, really. And the cornerstone of the whole thing is this exodus from Egypt. So I wanted to know whether this story in the Bible, which, by the way, is mentioned in the Quran in the same way, more or less, whether it is just a story, a mythological account for believers, or did it have a historical roots? And because Egypt nowadays has been excavated by archaeologists, and they discovered the tombs and the temples and different, writing, hieroglyphic texts and so on. We know now about ancient Egypt maybe more than some of our recent historical periods. So because we have the things, we have the tomb of Tutankhamun, we have different, texts written in details. We can examine all these details and we know the facts. So if the story of Moses in the Bible is really historical, then we should find evidence in Egyptian sources of these events, if it is not just a mythological account. So I started my search there. Obviously, when I started looking in Egypt, it was difficult for me to find the evidence, although we have the archaeology, we have the sites, the ancient monuments, and everything, but we don't have the text, the argument, the discussion, the knowledge. So I decided to come to London in order to start a study. Originally, when I came first, I thought that this subject must have been discussed and researched by many scholars, and they must have come to some conclusion. Who is Joseph historically? Who is Moses? What's the time? What is the name of the Pharaoh who appointed Joseph as his minister? Or the Pharaoh in whose royal palace Moses grew up? All these things, I thought, has been already discussed and revealed. To my surprise, although a lot of different views and discussions and arguments have been taking place, however, no identical object or character or time was established. It's a subject that has been discussed, but nobody has reached a conclusion and pinpoint a specific kind of evidence. So I had to start from the scratch. I decided to join an evening course with the London University to study the history of ancient Egypt for 3 years. Then I decided to follow that by another 3 years studying the hieroglyphic written language of ancient Egypt. Again, I needed to study the Hebrew Bible, biblical Hebrew, in order to compare the text of the Bible with the text of the Egyptian, because sometimes you have similarities in some words. Sometimes the English translation does not always give the exact sense of the Hebrew translation, so I need to know it. In some cases, I have to check the names and things on its original Hebrew text. So I started my research, and it took me maybe 15 years, sorry. It took me about 15 years first before I came to the first conclusion, to the first connection, evidence. It was one winter cold day in London when in the middle of the night I couldn't sleep. So I left my bed, I left my wife in the bedroom, and I came out I sat by the fire, made myself some tea, And I started reading the book of Genesis, the story of Joseph, as in fact I had read it many times before. But in that night, I saw something I never saw before. I realized a connection, a key point that I had missed in other my earlier readings. When Joseph was appointed by Pharaoh over Egypt to store food and so on, after he explained his dream, the Pharaoh dreams, there was in Canaan there was a kind of a famine. So Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to get corn. So when they came to Egypt, Joseph realized them, when he saw them, recognized them, because they were the same Bedouin kind of people. However, they did not recognize him, being completely Egyptianized. So on their second visit, he invited them to have a meal in his house. They sat alone, he sat alone, and his guard sat on a separate table. And then in an emotional moment, Joseph approached his brothers and revealed himself to them. I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold as a slave. So they were ashamed of what they did to him and so on. They tried to apologize. However, he told them, it is not you who brought me to Egypt here, but it is God who made me father to Pharaoh. Father to Pharaoh. This was an Egyptian and a very rare Egyptian title. Et Neter en Neptawi, the Holy Father of the Lord of the two lands, Father to Pharaoh. It was a unique and very rare title in Egyptian. Usually, any official, whatever his age was, if he was an old man or whatever, he was called the son of Pharaoh. The son of Pharaoh for the north, the son of Pharaoh for the south. This time, this guy is called Father to Pharaoh, which is a very rare title, and this guy was called Uya. The guy who took this title at this period of time was called Uya. And he was a minister of Pharaoh Amenhotep III of the 18th dynasty, and he was Pharaoh Amenhotep III, who ruled a great empire between the river Euphrates and the river Nile. He loved Tai, the daughter of Uya, his minister, and he married her, and he made her his queen, Queen Tai. And in this case, because Uya became a father-in-law to the king, that's why he got this rare title, which nobody really gets it. It's a very rare title. So I couldn't sleep after that. I stayed up until the morning, and I went to the Egypt Exploration Society. I was a member there, and they had a library, and I went to the library and got the book of the discovery of Uya's tomb, and I read it. I tried to find the thing, and suddenly the evidence started to come. First of all, the scribes who wrote the name, Uya's tomb was discovered in the Valley of the Kings. Strangely enough, although he was not a royal member of the royal family, however, he was buried with his wife, Uya and Tuya. He was buried in the tomb in the Valley of the Kings. A small tomb.
Wouldn't his wife have been a royal member of the royal family?
No, they were not. They were he. In fact, Yuya, I have come to identify as Joseph, patriarch of the coat of many colors of the Bible. So he's not even originally an Egyptian. He came from. This is Joseph, son of Jacob, the Israelite, and however, he was buried in the tomb in the Valley of the Kings, which is very strange. And there's nothing on the walls of the tomb. There's nothing written there, but his tomb is very well preserved. His mummy very well preserved. It's now in Cairo Museum, and he with his hooked nose is very Semitic, an un-Egyptian look. Elliot Smith, the anatomist who examined the mummy first, suggested that this is not Yuya could not be an original Egyptian. He is very Semitic looking and so on. So, and the first, I realized that because the scribes who wrote his name in the tomb wrote it in maybe 10 different ways. However, all the ways they wrote, they used the Y letter, which is Yod in Hebrew. Ya, you, Yi, Yaya, Yayu, Yuya, and so on. So, because Egyptians usually, first of all, if he was an ordinary Egyptian, they would have known his name exactly and written it in the same way. But because they wrote it in different ways, as Maspero suggested, they were writing, from something not known to them. Each one read it differently. Egyptians usually, in their names, relate the person to his deity, to his god. Amos, Tutmos, Amon-Hotep. They give the name of the god. They relate the person. So I realized also that in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, when the story of Joseph, when Pharaoh appointed Joseph as his minister, he gave him an Egyptian wife and an Egyptian name, starting with Seth. So, in fact, I realized that Joseph, Joseph is a combined name. Seth is an Egyptian name given to him by Pharaoh, and Seth, Joseph, is related to the name of Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, the Hebrew God. Yahweh, it's a short of Yahweh. So, and in reality, later on, a historian Manetho, the historian who wrote the 3rd century BC, who wrote the story of Egypt, ancient Egypt in Greek, mentioned that Amenhotep III, during Amenhotep III, there was some minister called Seth. So in fact, Seth is a combined name, and it's mentioned in Egyptian sources as Seth. So this is the thing. Then when I started to examine the details, other details of his life, it is exactly the same character. So I came to identify. This was my first book I wrote in 1988, identifying Yuya, minister of Amenhotep III of the 18th dynasty, as Joseph of the Bible. That was my first breaking point to connect in the historical term. At the time, a lot of people did not agree to that, accept that, but by now, many scholars and many people have accepted that, because in the beginning, people don't realize that when they examine and go through the evidence. In fact, I did ask the Minister of Culture before, Pharaoh Ramses, who was responsible for the antiquities to make, when he did not agree with me, I told him, okay, let us have a DNA test on the value of urea. If he proves to be the same kind of genes like the Upper Egyptians, then I can drop my argument. But if he proves to be a Semitic, or like the people in Sinai or in Palestine, then I have a case. But he refused. He said, we can't do that. I told him why. He said, because if we do that and your argument proves right, Israel will demand to take the money. I told him it is not possible because, first of all, according to the Bible, the book of Exodus, I think chapter 13 or something, they say Moses took the bones of Joseph with him out, so the religious reasons they wouldn't be able to do
Ahmed?
that. Again, according to UNESCO international agreements, any object found in a country belongs to that country that is found in it. Even if a Greek object was found in Turkey, it belongs to Turkey, not to Greek. So they cannot ask.
So I think it's very interesting what he's talking about, that they actually have found or have kind of pieced together possibilities of the Jewish narrative, the narrative of the Israelites in Egypt, except the names are different, yet the stories are the same. And it's going to be interesting to find out from Ahmed how that all happened, how that all worked out, because it has just been a mystery to everyone in the world trying to understand how there could be this very explicit narrative in the Bible that doesn't show up anywhere else. You know, with the only understanding that the story that's in the Bible is just a piece of fantasy. But I don't know, I guess I personally have a hard time believing that that whole storyline is just a work of fiction. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So you were just talking about Yuya and his correlation with Joseph, biblical fame, Joseph and the multicolored coat. But I thought in the Bible, when the Israelites left Egypt, that they took Jacob's body and Joseph's body. So how would it be possible for them to find, if it is Joseph's body, in Israel? Or do you think that they just, fudged what was going on in the Bible a bit?
No, I mean, Jacob died while Joseph was still alive. So according to the book of Exodus, Joseph took the body. First of all, he mummified, according to the Bible, the body of his father Jacob, and went out to bury his father in Canaan and came back. So, but at the end of the book of Genesis, they say, and Joseph died. He was mummified and put in a coffin and buried in Egypt. Now, in the book of Exodus, they say that Moses took the bones of Joseph with them. However, when I studied this verse, you see, the Bible is coming from two sources, some Yahwistic and some Jehovistic. Although the whole chapter is using one name of the deity of God, in these two verses, when telling that Moses took the bones, it is in the other name, so it's another source. Then again, the Talmud have a strange story in the Talmud, which is very important Jewish kind of text, that says that Moses looked for the bones or the body of Joseph to take it with him, but he couldn't find it. So he said, sorry, Joseph, we can't take it, and he went out. So there is the story, in fact, it is not confirmed historically, it came later that they added this, taking the bones out. Joseph remains, I think, stayed in Egypt. This is the whole, contrary to what the statement of the Bible, because as I told you, it's written in two verses in one chapter, and the whole chapter uses one name for God, and suddenly these two verses have a different name, indicates it came later from a different source.
So do you think that there was one primary text at one point in time, and then that text was edited as time went on, or do you think that it was put to, different pieces were put together?
No, according to biblical scholars now who studied the Bible from literary kind of sense, they came to the conclusion that the Bible was written from four different sources. One of them is Jehovistic, one is Yahwistic, one of them is priestly, and so on. So this is not my. I just relied on the biblical scholars' argument. It seems that in the later editing, in the beginning, because you see, during the time of Joseph, Joseph was a minister of Pharaoh. So, the relationship between the Hebrews and the Egyptians was very good. So I find the story going well. But later on, after the Exodus, when the Pharaoh oppressed the Israelites and so on, they wanted to, completely deny many things that, in the editors who wrote after that wanted to do. Anyhow, I came to the conclusion, and I was supported in this, by the way, by some Jewish biblical scholars, that the mummy remained in Egypt. It was not taken, including the Talmud itself. The Talmud is a Jewish oral transmission which was put into writing during the first centuries of AD. So anyhow, having established the connection between Joseph and Yuya, Joseph's mummy is in Cairo Museum. Patriarch Joseph's mummy is in Cairo Museum now.
Will they let anybody do DNA testing on it?
It can be tested. If they want to test it, DNA, they can test it, but they don't want to test it anyhow. The second stage for me was to look for Moses. And here I had to rely, I was inspired by Sigmund Freud, the professor of psychiatry, who established psychiatry and so on. Freud wrote a book. He wrote it in articles first when he was still in Vienna, and when he came to London in 1939, he wrote a book he called Moses and Monotheism. He suggested that Moses, in fact, was an Egyptian. Why he suggested that? He said, okay, the story of the birth of Moses was a prototype story which was mentioned for different heroes of the past. Romulus of Rome, who built Rome, and Agad of Mesopotamia, and Oedipus of the Greeks. In all the cases, a child of a royal family. The royal family was threatened, you see, so they smuggled the child, who was their heir, sent him away to be brought up by a poor family. When he grows up, the child realizes his true royal origin and goes back and demands the throne of his father. This is the usual
That
story.
even sounds like the story of Zeus or King Arthur, and the sword.
Many heroes have the same prototype. He said, only in the case of Moses, we have the switch of the situation. The boy is born to a poor family and brought up in a royal family. So he said this switch must have taken place deliberately in order to hide the nature of the origin of Moses. And he suggested that Moses was an Egyptian. My conclusion, obviously, as I have already established, that originally established that Uya, who Joseph, his daughter Tai married Amenhotep III, the king, and she gave birth to a boy. Later on became known as Akhenaton. And he is the one who recognized that God is one, Aten is one, with no image, and closed the temples, stopped all worship. I mean, he did that. So in this case, Moses was half Egyptian. His father was the king of Egypt, Amenhotep III, and half Israelite through his mother, because his grandfather, maternal grandfather, is Joseph the patriarch. So in fact, this is the strange thing, that Moses was both Egyptian and Israelite.
Is there any story that supports? I mean, I know that it's kind of a global mythic theme, but was Akhenaten sent off during childhood to protect him because he was a lesser son?
No, not in that way. But I tell you the similarity here between the Bible and the story of Akhenaten. When Amenhotep III married Tai, daughter of Joseph, he wanted her to be his queen. But the priest objected. Usually, the throne in Egypt was inherited through the female line. So that's why, the eldest, whoever married the eldest daughter of Pharaoh has the right to follow him on the throne. That's why the prince had to marry his sister, only in the royal family, because of this, to keep the throne within the family. And Amenhotep III had already married his sister, Sitamon, to gain the right to the throne. However, he wanted, because he loved Tai, daughter of Uya, he wanted to make her a queen. And this is against the tradition in Egypt. The king can marry as many wives as he wants, but the only great wife, they call her, is his sister, the heiress, whose children have the right to follow their father on the throne. The other wives are treated like concubines. They have no right, the children have no right to the throne. This is the whole thing. But when Amenhotep III insisted that Tai should be one, he wanted two queens really, the priesthood refused that. So what happened is Tai soon gave birth to a boy called Thutmose. And Amenhotep III, insisting on making Tai his queen, appointed this boy, when he was still about 5 years of age, he appointed him as his heir, the heir to the throne. However, suddenly, we don't have more details, but this boy disappeared. He was killed, assassinated, without anybody knowing anything about him. So when Tai gave birth to a second boy, in this case Akhenaten, she was afraid he might be killed in the same way as her first son. So she didn't bring him to live with her and with his father in the royal palace, royal residence in Malkata, which is on the west side of Luxor, Thebes. She didn't bring him to live with him there. She kept him away from the royal palace, and she had a brother called Anin, the Queen Tai had a brother called Anin. He was the priest of Heliopolis, priest of Ra in Heliopolis. There's a lot of indications that Akhenaten lived with his uncle there in Heliopolis for about 16 years. He never went to join the other princes or the upper class in studies or games or something. He was completely isolated away until he reached the age of 16. Only then he was allowed to come to the throne. And one of a very strange title Akhenaten has indicates that there was a threat on his life when he was young. He's given a title, the long living. And his early statues, when he made early statues, he made it as an Osiris, although Osiris is only the dead king. He made himself the first statues, he made it as a living dead, and as an Osiris, which is very strange. But this indicates that there was a threat on his life when he was young, and he survived. So we have evidence of that. Now, also, again, it was Sigmund Freud who suggested that the Aten religion, the god of Akhenaten, Aten, which is, by the way, indicates light, beams of light, is the same religion as the Jewish religion. Aten, by the way, is the same Hebrew word Adonai. Adon or Adonai is my Lord. Is the same name. In fact, following Sigmund Freud's argument, I started to look seriously on these lines, and I found very strange evidence. First of all, I realized that Akhenaten did not die at the end of his 17 years reign, because everybody thinks he ruled 17 years, he must have died then.
Or was assassinated or something.
The indication, many evidences support the fact that he did not die. He was overthrown by a military coup d'etat, because at the end of the day, you see, as long as his father lived, from the very start, when his mother brought him to the royal residence in Thebes when he was 16, she wanted him to, because his father was getting ill, his health was not well, and she was afraid the father will die before appointing his son as a successor. And she wanted him to marry Nefertiti, which was the heiress, the daughter of Sitamon, his half-daughter, his sister. She wanted him to marry Nefertiti to gain the right to the throne. So Amenhotep III he made him his co-regent. Akhenaten became a co-regent in Thebes, which upset the priests very much, but they couldn't because the king insisted. However, he went straight to the Karnak temple, and he built a small temple for himself at the back of the Karnak for Aten, his god. And the Egyptian priests would not mind to have, all in Karnak there was a chapel or a temple for each god. All the gods of Egypt represented in the temple. However, he forbade anybody to enter the temple of Aten unless he denounced all the other gods. Aten was one god. So they started to make trouble for him, and he was forced to leave the Thebes and go and build himself the city of Amarna, Akhetaten in Amarna, which is a different city altogether. And he lived alone with his wife and his followers in Amarna until his father died. When his father died, he became the sole ruler of Egypt. He decided, he sent the army to close the temples of all the gods, cut off the names of the deities, even the name gods in plural, he cut it off from everywhere. The name of Ammon in his father's name, Amenhotep, he cut the word Ammon. So he was completely, and for Egyptians, the concept of a god that have no image and have no, anybody can reach God directly without need to of a mediator. This was a little bit too much, too far for the Egyptians, who had to go through rituals and mystery and so on to recognize the Ammon or Ra or Osiris or Isis or all these deities. So it was very difficult for the Egyptian to follow. Very few people followed him. At the end of the day, the priests of Ammon, who were deposed by the king, with the army, they plotted against Akhenaten, and they forced him to abdicate the throne for his son Tutankhamun. Now we have evidence of that. There is an archaeologist, a French archaeologist called Alain Zivy. Alain Zivy dug in Saqqara, and he found the tomb of a nurse of Tutankhamun called Maya, the nurse of Tutankhamun. On the wall, on one of the walls of the tomb, he have a scene of the nurse sitting on a seat, and on her lap sat Tutankhamun as a king. Tutankhamun came to the throne when he was 9, so he was a young boy. He was sitting on her lap, and behind the seat there were 5 characters, drawn 5 characters, who are the ministers of the king. Now, 4 of them were, in fact, were military generals. All of them were military generals except the finance minister, was all generals. Not only were generals of the army, but 3 of them succeeded Tutankhamun on the throne. Horemheb, Horemheb, and Ramses. Ramses was in the beginning. Ramses I was a general of the army, and his son Seti I. All of them generals were. This is a strong proof that Akhenaten was deposed by a military coup who established the ministry of Tutankhamun. So he lived. Now there's also indication that he stayed after he had to stand down to abdicate the throne. He went to Sinai. There's an area about a few kilometers from Mount Sinai called Mount Sarabit. And Mount Sarabit has a temple on top of it. And there's evidence that he lived sometime in the temple of Sarabis, because the Petrie, the British, Flinders Petrie, the British archaeologist who dug the area of the temple of Sarabis, found a statue head of Queen Tai in the temple. Why should we have this statue of Queen Tai in this area far away? This is Akhenaten's mother. Then again, when after the fall of Amarna, when Aten was forbidden completely to be worshipped in Egypt and all over the land, we have a prayer in this area on a stone to Aten in this location, which is very strange because Aten was not worshipped before in Sinai, and he is not. He was forbidden in Egypt. So there are indications that Akhenaten went to Sinai for exile. Strangely enough, the Talmud again, because the Talmud kept some oral traditions that were not in the Bible. The Talmud says that Moses, after killing the Egyptian, he did not go straight to Sinai, as the Bible says. He went first to Upper Egypt. They call it Ethiopia, in Upper Nubia, Upper Egypt. And there he married the queen. He married a queen. Her husband was dead. He married the queen and ruled Egypt with his queen. And after 9 years, he was forced to abdicate the throne for the son of the queen. And then he went to Sinai. Why should the Talmud have this story? That Moses was a king for 9 years. I mean, you cannot say that it happened by accident. This is an echo of suppressed information in the past that survived in the Talmud rather than the Bible. So I think that Moses is the same character as Akhenaten. Again, the very, as Freud suggested, the very name Moses is an Egyptian name, not a Hebrew name. Moses means the son or the heir. Tut Mos, Petah Mos, the son of Tut, the son of Petah, and so on. And when Akhenaten was, forced to abdicate the throne, he had to lose every thing, indicate his royal power, including his name. Akhenaten's name was forbidden. After his abdication. No text in Egypt mentioned the name of Akhenaten. Even the list of kings after that, his name and the name of Tutankhamun were taken off. So he became a nameless person. And a nameless person takes usually, if he wants to be mentioned, his name, he takes the name of Moses, Mos, which is Moses. So even the name, Akhenaten's name, the name of Moses was not really his original name. Moses was a name he was given after they took off his royal name.
So when you think of the movie The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston and, Seti says, we'll never say the name of Moses again, what you're saying is they would say Moses, but what they really meant was Akhenaten.
It is true. This is exactly what they would never mention. His name was not mentioned after that. So in order to be named by something, they told it, and this is, we have this case in Egypt many times. Somebody, if he denied his property or original contact, they call him Moses. So this is it. You got it from the movie. By the way, there is a movie coming out in December by Ridley Scott about the Exodus.
Well, I don't know. I had a hard time. I couldn't even make myself go see the Noah movie with Russell Crowe. I was like, I just can't see how they could make it be even remotely real. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyhow, I came to the conclusion, really, that Akhenaten is Moses. This was my second step.
Well, we're going to go to break here really soon. We have about 4 minutes. So let me throw a question at you. So Please. If Akhenaten was... Well, wait a minute, but they found Akhenaten's bones, didn't they? Don't they have his mummy?
This is a trick. You see, Akhenaten built himself a tomb in Amarna, in his city that he's built. And the tomb was excavated. There's no evidence at all that he was ever buried in his tomb, okay? Then there was somebody, you might have heard of him, Zahi Hawass was the Minister of Antiquities.
Yeah, we've talked about him on the show a lot.
Yeah. And he completely denied what I was saying. He said, "How dare you saying that one of our pharaohs has a Hebrew blood?" I told him, "What's wrong with Hebrew blood?" I mean, I suppose that Muhammad, our prophet, Muslim prophet, he comes from Abraham, who is the father of the Hebrews. So what's wrong with that? Anyhow, I told him, if you can find the mummy, because we know that Moses was never buried in a proper tomb. He was buried at the foot of a mountain, Sinai, northern Sinai. So if you can find the mummy, so what did he do? This guy, he went and got a mummy that was in Cairo Museum of a boy of 23. I mean, at least 4 anatomists and dentists have identified this as Semin Kara, a boy of 23. And he declared that this is the mummy of Akhenaten. I mean, on what evidence, I don't know. I mean, Akhenaten ruled, he was 16 years when he came to the throne. And he ruled for 17 years. Even if you say he died at the end of his rule, he would have been 34 years. This guy, his tooth of wisdom has not appeared yet. It just started, it's not appeared. And 4 major universal professors said that this mummy is only for a boy of 23. Now he wants to, he came to identify this. This is a great falsification of evidence. Just to prove me wrong, Hawass pronounced that this is the mummy, and he is the only one who said that, but because of his position, they took it to be But I think the mummy has to be re-examined and given it was in Cairo Museum under the name of Semin Kara. Semin Kara, who died at the age of 23. He was a brother of Akhenaten, a younger brother who died early. So no, they have not discovered the mummy of Akhenaten. This was Hawass' attempt to falsify the evidence.
Okay, and on that note, we're going to go to break. So when we come back, let's continue this piece of conversation because I have a couple of questions. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We are talking to Ahmed Osman about his book, The Lost City of Exodus. His webpage is ahmedosman.com, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Are you looking for a cure for boredom? Never worry. IRN's new interactive website introduces a number of ways to pass time while you listen to your favorite show. Choose anything from the IRN Chat Lounge, the Game Lounge, Video Lounge, or the Mood Lounge. These fun, exciting features let you chat in real time with fellow listeners, view live skywatches, play daily posted online games, or pick a show based on topic. The choices are endless. Use your time wisely, keeping it all on IRN.
Who were the gods of antiquity? They've been described as the forces of nature, levels of consciousness, and aspects of our psyche. Stories that depict their incredible weapons, their flying machines, and their amazing adventures are characterized as being the product of our ancestors' fanciful imaginations. But what if the tales of the gods are true? Did the writers, chroniclers, and scribes of our distant past actually document a realistic view of our origin? My latest book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, looks at our most ancient legends. Learn of the torrid romances, elaborate plots, violent scandals, and conspiracies that played out in antiquity. Find out the role the gods played in the life and culture we have today. If you want to find out the truth of who we are and where we come from, order your copy of Man-Made today. For more information, go to www.manmadethechronicles.com. That's www.manmadethechronicles.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationships, naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
We only have a couple of seconds before we have to get back to the show, and I want to tell you how you can jumpstart your intuition today. Using my free 50-page introductory guide filled with simple, revolutionary, and proven techniques, you can ignite your intuition and tap into your inner wisdom, all from the comfort of your own home. The Institute of Applied Energetics is the leader in online home study instruction for those interested in becoming a certified medical intuitive, intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. Now is the time to transform your life and take it to a completely new level. Discover who you are and how you work. Open the door to the world of intuition, health, and healing. You can jumpstart your intuition right away by going to www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and downloading our free guide. Get the opportunity of a lifetime and live the life you deserve. Download your free Jumpstart Your Intuition guide today at www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and begin living a life filled with passion and purpose.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may be keeping you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment with Meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. That's right, that's www.soulhealer.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all of the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the live request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hey, we're back. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and you're listening to Just Energy Radio. Thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. This hour is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. So please stop by the site and download your 50-page free Jumpstart Your Intuition guide and get started opening yourself up to your true potential. Also brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer. So if there's stuff going on in your life, give me a call. We'll set up a time for a private consultation. It's all good. Again, don't forget to like us or on Facebook, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, or sign up for our weekly newsletter. So Ahmed, when we were going to break, we were talking about Akhenaten and how the mummy that they found that they were claiming was Akhenaten wasn't really Akhenaten, but his younger brother, or they think was his younger brother. So if they have not found Akhenaten, and your theory that Akhenaten is Moses, so is the story of Moses that we hear about in the Bible actually the story of Akhenaten's journey out of Egypt?
Yes, obviously he didn't make it at the end of the day. He was not allowed to enter according to the Bible, to enter to the promised land. But yes, it is. Let me first try in order to prove that somebody, is a specific person, we have to show that they lived in the same time, at the same address, at the same time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and the one of the big points that confused the scholars is the fact that the Bible says, the book of Exodus, and now the sojourn of the Israelites in Egypt was 430 years. You see, so people took 430 years. So they had to, in this case, they said, all right, Joseph came from Canaan, and some Hyksos shepherds, Canaanites, were in Egypt, ruled Egypt in the mid-17th century, and they said, okay, he must have come at the time of the first Hyksos kings. And counting 430 years, they reach the time of Ramses II. However, if you were, to read, the book of Genesis itself says that Abraham had a dream. God, at the time, usually the patriarch would put some stones on top of each other as a pile, and have some oil on top of that, and he sleeps the night next to it, and he expects that God will communicate with him then. Then God told him, Abraham, you know that your descendants will be in a strange foreign land and for some time, and the fourth generation will come back. So 4 generations. You see, now from between Jacob's descendants, you see, Levi, then
Hello, Ahmed.
Yes.
We need to call you back because you're really breaking up again. Calling him again right now, and hopefully this will just be very short, and we'll get him back on.
Hello. If we see between Levi and Moses, there are 4 generations. Levi.
You're good. Did you just hold that thought right in your mind?
Yeah. Levi.
Okay, no, go ahead.
Levi, Kohath, Imram, and Moses. All right? As God said to Abraham, the 4th generation will come out. This of your descendants.
But I don't understand how that could be, if it was only 4 generations, how that could be 430 years unless they lived a really long time.
Yes, this is the whole thing. Now, if you look at the ages of these generations as given in the Bible, Levi lived 120 years, Kohath 137 years, and Amram 120 years, and so on. So if you can add the 4 generations, it comes to 525 years. Now, they take, as Levi came to Egypt from Canaan with his father Jacob, at the age of 56, I think, they take this out from the total, and Moses went out from Egypt, they say, at the age of 80, and he lived 40 years in the wilderness. So they take the 80, also 40 years out. If you add the total life age of generations in Egypt, they come to 430 years.
Can I just interject one little comment? Because most of the other pharaohs didn't live very long, and then we have Ramses II that would live till he was 82, something like that.
The second lived for 95.
95, which was so unheard of. But if he was from that bloodline and they were living that long, that would make a lot of sense to me.
No, I don't believe this. I was told by different archaeologists and so on that the average age at that time, either in Egypt or in Canaan, was about 30. 30, 35. That's why if somebody lives for the age of 60 or 70, he regard him as a holy man, as a special person. No, there's no way, but the Bible exaggerates always in figures. So anyhow, it's not our problem now. What we have to prove is that the 430 years is in fact the total of the ages of the 4 generations. It's not the period they stayed in Egypt, is their ages. So as if every generation did not begat his descendant, his son, before the day he died. You cannot do it that way. And in fact, this has been argued by some senior Israeli Jewish professors, and they came to the conclusion that this figure is not historically accurate. They said that the Bible wants to stress that each generation suffered on its own for that length, but for somebody to bring his first son, you can give him 20 years or something like that. 4 generations is about 80 years, no more than 80 years. So in fact, rather than the time of Ramses II, it is the time of Ramses I, and that's why. I think the time between Joseph, and Akhenaten, and Ramses I. I believe that Ramses I, rather than Ramses II, was the pharaoh of the Exodus. What happened is after. Akhenaten was forced to abdicate the throne to his son Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun stayed a few years in the city of Amarna, but he realized that the people are not able to understand this God, the concept of a God with no image. So he went back to Thebes, and he reopened the temple of Karnak, and restored all the temples in Egypt, and allowed. However, although Tutankhamun allowed the old gods to come back, but he still, until the very end of his rule, and you can see that on the throne, his throne, which is in the Cairo Museum, the name of Aton as a sole god in a cartouche as a ruling deity is on his throne seat. So he still recognized Aton as Akhenaten, his father, realized it as the sole god. What Tutankhamun, however, did is very interesting, because he, in a way, by realizing that people cannot reach the abstract supreme deity directly, he allowed them to go through a mediator. So in a way, he regarded these deities, Ammon and Ra and all these deities, as mediators between people and the supreme spiritual power, which appears in the New Testament as the angelic word, the angels who are mediator between humans and saints and angels. You see, it doesn't appear in the Old Testament. There's no angels in the Old Testament. It's only in the New Testament. And I think it is the origin of this angelic word is Tutankhamun's allowing the deities to be worshipped, but not in themselves, because he still recognized Aton as a supreme and one supreme God. So they're only there to mediate. Anyhow, few years later, Tutankhamun is dead, and Horemheb comes to the throne. Horemheb completely forbade the worship of Aton in Egypt, completely forbade the mention of the names of Akhenaten or Tutankhamun. It is cut off from all the existing texts, and at the same time collected the followers of Akhenaten and put them in a border city. We have in northern Sinai, in an area called Kantara East, in northern Sinai, the Egyptians built a military city with high walls to protect their entrance point. At the starting of the road going to Canaan, from Egypt to Canaan, there's a road that leads there, and the army, Egyptian army, used to go this road after that. So the big kind of a walled military city guarding the borders is called Zaro. And this Zaro, Horemheb collected the followers of Akhenaten, of Aton religion, and put them in this walled city at the corner. This is interesting, since when Joseph was a minister of Amenhotep III, and he wanted to bring Jacob and his family to Egypt, he asked Pharaoh if he can bring his family, and Pharaoh accepted, which, in my view, Pharaoh was at the time Amenhotep III. Now, when they came, because Egypt, as I told you, was ruled by some shepherds called the Hyksos, known as the Hyksos, who ruled Egypt for 100 years. So until Ahmos the first kicked them out and established the 18th dynasty, which with the starting of the empire. Now, the Egyptians, since that time, were a little bit uneasy about allowing shepherds into their country. So what happened is that although Pharaoh agreed that Jacob and his 70 members of his family come to Egypt and live there, he did not allow them to enter the Nile Valley. Because once you enter the Nile, you can have a boat and go to anywhere you like. But in this city, or the border city of Zaro, it was a walled city. there, and you cannot go to Egypt unless you cross a bridge with guards on the bridge. So this is a border city. You cannot enter without a visa, without an acceptance and agreement. And that's this area that the Israelites were allowed to live is near this city, walled city in northern Sinai, a city of Zaro. And the Bible calls this area Goshen. And they allow them to live in the area of Goshen. They were not allowed to enter Egypt of the Nile. They're allowed to live there.
So why weren't they allowed to enter that area?
Because this area, if you live in that area, you cannot cross to. There was a water barrier with a bridge. You cannot cross there, and this bridge is guarded unless you have a.
No, but but why couldn't they go into Egypt proper to where the Nile was? What was?
Because, as I told you, there were shepherds, and the shepherds, according to the Bible, they say were abomination to the Egyptians. The Egyptians feared the shepherds, because the shepherds ruled Egypt as a Hyksos before. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This is the Bible says that the shepherds were abomination. So Pharaoh did not allow them to live in Egypt itself. Gave them a border area called, the Bible calls it Goshen. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. But this Goshen is the same area as the border city of Zaro. All right?
Okay.
Now, when Joseph died and a new king came, and the Bible never mentioned the name of Pharaoh or of the oppressor of Pharaoh of the Exodus. He never mentioned that. He just say Pharaoh, but he said Pharaoh said, "Let us take a serious step. These people might multiply and become dangerous, and they can join our enemies against us, and so on." And they started to put them in hard labor. And according to the book of Exodus, he put them on forced labor to build a store city of Ramses. So the name Ramses is mentioned, but not as a pharaoh, as a city, as a store city. And obviously because they were living in the area of Goshen, this city, store city, has to be in the same area because they were not allowed to enter the you see what I mean? So mm-hmm. The city of Ramses must be in that area. Now, we know that Ramses I, who was a general of the army, who shared the coup d'etat against Akhenaten, later became a general of the last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, Horemheb. And as Horemheb had no successor, heir to the throne, when Horemheb died, General Ramses appointed himself as a king, who started the 19th dynasty. Now, Ramses I was born. Ramses I himself was born in the city of Zaro, which is the capital city of the area where the Israelites lived, Goshen. Zaro was the capital city ruling the area of Goshen in the border area. So he was born there, and he became the ruler of that city, officially. So in this case, they suppose, most of the Egyptologists or scholars assume building the city of Ramses is building the city of Ramses II. They forget completely Ramses I because they took a different time for the Exodus at the time of Ramses II. However, it was because they never left the area of Goshen, and while they were in Goshen, they were forced to build a city of Ramses. So the city of Ramses that they built, in fact, was in the same area they lived in Goshen, which within the town, the fortress of Zaro, and archaeologists have this. When they dug this area, they found about 30 big food stores. You usually build stores for food in a border city like that because it's an isolated from the land. If you are in the Nile anywhere, you don't need to build all these stores. You are near the fields. You can get the food straight from the fields. But if you are living away in northern Sinai, you need store cities. That's why when they found the city of Ramses II, they didn't find any stores in the city of Ramses near the delta in Tal al-Daba, an area called Tal al-Daba. But here they found about 30 large stores for food. What happened is that this Ramses I came to the throne. Now let us go back to Moses. If Akhenaten was in Sinai, in Sarabit al-Khadim, in Sinai, in his exile. Now the 18th dynasty has come to an end without an heir. So Ramses I, being a general of the army and a governor of the city of Zaro, announced himself to be a king. Now, I have no evidence of that archaeologically, but you can imagine the situation. Akhenaten, being the deposed the king who was forced to abdicate the throne. And by the way, I have to talk to you about the rod of Moses. Moses is said to have had a rod with magical powers. Oh, this rod, it can part the sea, it can bring catastrophes on the pharaohs, it can and it turns into a snake. In fact, this rod is no more than the Egyptian scepter of power. Every ruler, every king has a scepter of power, a rod which looked like a snake, in fact. And if you were to move it around quickly, it looks as if it is moving, in fact. So this is not an ordinary rod. This is a snake. It looks like Akhenaten must have taken with him when he went to Sinai for exile. He must took his scepter of power with him, and that also can explain to us how can a Bedouin guy coming from Sinai comes and be allowed to enter the palace, the royal palace of Pharaoh, and challenge him. I mean, imagine now if some Bedouin guy goes, an ordinary guy goes to the White House and want to enter and meet. Will he be allowed to enter the city? I mean, Pharaoh was like a half god on earth. How can somebody just like that? I mean, if you look at it, not in a miraculous way, but in a historical context. I mean, but if he has this powerful thing, the rod, which is the scepter of power, no God will be able to stop him entering to the palace. No God will be, because in Egyptian understanding, if he is a pharaoh, if he has this rod, he is a pharaoh and he is the son of God, and nobody can stop him. So this allows him not only to go to the royal palace and speak to Pharaoh, but to challenge the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh here is not even able to take action immediately. Instead, he asks to give him time to gather the priests, the magicians, the priests of the country, to judge between the two people. I mean, Akhenaten, being in Sinai, knows that the Pharaoh Horemheb, who wanted him, is dead. So he comes to Ramses I is declaring himself a king. Now he comes and challenges Ramses on his right to the throne. So he wanted a comeback to the throne. He got the scepter of power with him. He came, he said, I am the heir to the 18th dynasty, you are not. And in this case, when the priests came, and here, I have to tell you the truth, the story, as if it's told in the Quran, makes a better sense in this way. As soon as the priests saw the rod with Akhenaten, with Moses, they bowed the knee in front of him and accepted his authority. You see, I mean, this is it, because he had the scepter of power. And
that makes a lot of sense. You know, I always wondered how anybody, I mean, other than one that had a relationship with the Pharaoh or with the court, could just walk in there. I mean, you make a really excellent point with that, because you wouldn't. There would be protection. But let me ask this question. I mean, what you're suggesting is that Akhenaten is overrun and his rule taken away from him, but he didn't have to leave, or he was just sent into exile into Goshen?
No, Akhenaten did. The Israelites were living in Goshen, but he went to the south. Goshen is in northern Sinai, but he went to southern Sinai, near the mount of Moses, and in the south. Akhenaten was in the south in exile, but he came to Goshen. He came to Zaro, where Ramses I was, and using this rod, which is a very powerful thing, this is the royal scepter. I mean, this is nobody can have this thing except the Pharaoh. So he used it, and nobody can stop him going, and not only challenging going into Pharaoh, but challenging him on the right to the throne. And Ramses has to gather the priests. And moreover, when the priests come, they choose, once they see this rod, they choose the Akhenaten, Moses, as the real right, the one who has the right to the throne. In this case, Ramses decided to go. I mean, to take. To use his army and force his position in. So Moses, Akhenaten, decides to take his people out and escape. And if you look at this area of Goshen, it was surrounded by water, but shallow water from three sides. So the only way, the one road that leads to Canaan Strait, which the army is guarding to reach to Canaan. And the Bible says they did not go through the road of the Philistine, which was near, which is this road, reading from the Zaro, but because they were afraid that they would be caught in this road, because it's an army guarded road, he went through this shallow water. This water is only goes to the knees. I mean, if you are walking, it can go through, but if the chariot follows in the same, it gets stuck in the mud. I mean, I try to explain things historically, scientifically, and not rely on the miraculous events. I mean, in my view, I mean, everybody can believe what they want. But for me, this area was surrounded by shallow water, and the Israelites must have crossed this area on foot. So they passed it slowly, but they passed. When the chariots of Pharaoh tried to follow them, it got stuck. Strangely enough, now we have another state. That in that moment of history, in that moment, while the Israelites going out, Ramses I dies. He's dead. Ramses I ruled for less than 2 years. And then, obviously, we know from the Bible that Moses, when he was in Sinai, he made contact and friendship with the Midianites. The Midianites were the Bedouin tribes of Sinai. The Bible told the Midianites, the Egyptian talk about them as Shasu. They called them Shasu. So the text says then, while Ramses I is dead and being mummified, reports come from the border to his son and successor Seti I. Reports come that the Shasu Bedouins are gathering in northern Sinai, rebelling against Egyptian authority and trying to leave Egypt into Canaan. Now, what is the Exodus? What is the idea of the Exodus? The Exodus is some Semitic Bedouin tribes trying to leave Egypt into Canaan. This is the Exodus. I mean, and from all the Egyptian sources, there's only one case which we have evidence, archaeological evidence, of some Bedouin tribes trying to leave Egypt into Canaan, and it is this at this very time. So what happened is Seti I left his father to be mummified. The mummification process takes about 70 days. He leaves them to be mummified, and he goes on at the head of his army, and he chased the Bedouins on northern Sinai, and he went to Gaza across to stop them going there. And we know the 40 years of wonder, they scattered in Sinai, and he captured some of them and brought them back to slaughter them at the foot of Ammon's statue in Karnak temple. And I believe that this Set, King Set the first, is the one who killed Akhenaten in Sinai during this period, because this is a source of a new kind of a myth of Isis and Set and Osiris. Set killed Osiris, and so on. Starting from that time, this story took a different, a new thing. And in fact, Sigmund Freud himself suggested that the Bible, he said, he relied on some German scholar, biblical scholar, who said that, believed that the Israelites must have killed Moses because he was. I don't think that the Israelites killed Moses, but Moses was killed. And the account in the Bible of Moses losing his eye and so on in the fight against the evil, satanic kind of character. I mean, I think that Seti killed Akhenaten and buried him in a ditch, unidentified ditch somewhere in northern Sinai, and brought the rest. And the Israelites scattered in Sinai for what is regarded as 40 years of wonder, after which they started to get to. So I believe that the Pharaoh of suppression was Horemheb, who suppressed the worship of Aton, Adonai, and that he collected them, the rest of them, in the same area of Goshen, and that Akhenaten, thinking that his chance has come to come back to power after the death of Horemheb, being the last pharaoh of the 18th century, came back to challenge the king, but the king, being at the same time as a general of the army, used his army, so Moses has to escape with his followers across the thing, and however he died. I don't know how he died, but we know that in this very strange, this is one thing that the Bible agrees with history, that Pharaoh died in this time. Whether he drowned or not, we don't know, but he died. And by the way, the mummy of Ramses I have been in America until a few years ago when they returned it to Egypt. It have been in America for a long time in a small museum in the United States and was returned about 4 or 5 years ago. So Seti the First then came and stopped them entering there. So about 20 years ago, I suggested that the Goshen area in northern Sinai is the same area where the city of Ramses, which even also the Bible mentions the name of Ramses twice. Once when Pharaoh, whose name is not mentioned, Pharaoh forced the Israelites to build store city of Ramses. Obviously, in the same location they were living. The second thing, when they say that the Israelites, Moses led the Israelites out of the city of Ramses, the same location where they built. It was the misunderstanding made scholars think that this Ramses must be Ramses II. So they went. There was a royal palace, a city of Ramses II, was discovered near the Nile Delta, but there was no. It was far from the location of the Goshen, and it has nothing to do. No evidence there to support. But if we come here in this area, we find that this is the area of Goshen in northern Sinai where the Israelites lived, and this is the area which, at the beginning of which, is the road connecting Egypt with Canaan, with Palestine. According to the Bible, the geography fits very well, and this is the city which archaeologists have dug recently and found at least 30 stores, big stores for food. So I think that, contrary to general belief before, it's not Ramses II, who was about 95 years when he died, and could not have rode a chariot to chase the Israelites out. But it is Ramses I who was, and he even died at the same time. So this is my.
But then, all right. So let's just go with your speculation that Moses Akhenaten was killed by Ramses I.
No, not Ramses, because Ramses died before the chase.
Okay, but after the chase, after he goes and tries to get away. And so if he dies, then where did all of the stories about, the burning bush and the 10 Commandments and, the golden calf? I mean, where did all of those stories come from? Okay.
Now here I have a little bit different interpretation of this area than the common thing in the Bible. What the Bible says is that when Moses took the Israelites out, he went first down to the south, to Mount Sinai, where the burning bush, and the burning bush was before he comes. He find the burning bush while he was in exile, when God told him, go and get the Israelites out. So this is the burning bush. And he was living in this area anyhow. Akhenaten was living, because this burning bush is a few kilometers away from Mount Sarabit, where he was. It's the same valley. So the burning bush. But what the Bible says, that after the Exodus, after they went out of the Goshen and across the sea, of the waters, they went to the south. There is no real evidence of that. I think that the story of the Bible, of the Torah, Moses receiving the Torah and so on, took place before that. When Moses was in exile on his own, and he was kind of made an alliance with the Bedouin of the area, Midianites, and some Bibles say that he married one of the daughters of the priest of the Midianites. I think he took with him his followers. Followers were the Levites. The Levites were with him at the first place, and he got on the mountain. He got the Torah at that time. At that time, not while he was in exile and before coming back. And here I completely disagree with the chronology of events in the Bible. The Bible puts this thing after he led the Israelites out, and I think the Torah was given to him before he comes back. After the event of the bush, the burning bush, he got everything there, and all surrounding him were a few people of his close people of the Levites, the priestly tribe. And then he came back, and then, but when he went out straight to the north, and he was attempting to leave Egypt into Sinai. At the time, into Canaan, I mean. And at the time, Canaan was part of the Egyptian Empire. And if a guy who claims to be a royal king and he has the scepter of power with him leaves Egypt into part of the empire, he make a lot of trouble. That's why Seti has to chase him and he has to kill him. And that's why I told Hawass, you will never find the mummy of Moses, of Akhenaten, because he was never buried in the Egyptian usual. He was never mummified and buried in the same way. You see, and he has to get a mummy of 23 years old boy and claim this is Akhenaten. But Akhenaten was never buried in an Egyptian way, fearing that he might cause trouble when he moves to Sinai, to part of the Egyptian empire. Seti killed him. And Seti, from that time, Seti obviously, Set is Shaitan, is the devil in Egyptian mythology. Seti is, you see, from that, because he is the one who killed Osiris. Set killed Osiris. I mean, this...
well, and didn't you say that they called him the eternal Pharaoh or something like that, and he was connected with Osiris in some way, mythologically?
Akhenaten?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in a way. Yeah, I mean, in a way, he represented the Osiris. And Tutankhamun, his son, represented the Horus in the mythology of from the 19th dynasty onwards. Although the story, in historical terms, was suppressed, but it survived in the Isis-Osiris myth, in a way. So they took symbols rather than giving names, because names were forbidden. So he was regarded as the Osiris killed by Set, and Tutankhamun was regarded as the Horus.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of messianic thing about Tutankhamun as well. So I think it is the Amarna. I tell you the truth, what I believe now. The Amarna age, Tutankhamun and Akhenaten, both of them, represent the fountain of all our spiritual kind of Judaism, Islam, Christianity. This is the source. It is a vision of one man. You see, because what happened is, was in ancient Egypt, very early. We don't know why, how did it come, but from the early time, from the time of the builders of the pyramid, Egyptians recognized that man has two dimensions, one physical and one spiritual. And when the spiritual dimension leaves the body, which they symbolized it by a bird flying on top of the body, the body can die. However, they thought that if they were able to keep the body safe through mummification process and through burial in a tomb, protected, secure tomb, with some magical spells to protect the dead in the underworld, the Book of the Dead on the wall. One day they believed that the spiritual dimension will come back to the body and the resurrection will take place. This is what the Egyptians said. But because of this mummification, no other nation in the world have ever believed in that belief at that time. Never, ever. Only the Egyptian believed in that. Now, because of this process of mummification is very expensive, only kings and royals and rich ministers and so on can do that. Ordinary people have no money, so they have no chance to live the eternal life. They only can live the eternal life through belonging to Pharaoh. That's why they build the pyramid. Pyramid is, in a way, the home of the spirit of Egypt. The whole country lives through the pyramid, connecting earth to heaven, to the sky. So this is the idea. Now, after about 1,500 years, 15 centuries later, comes this guy, Akhenaten. He is challenged. You are not the legitimate son of Amun because you are not. Your mother is not the heiress. You are not illegal. You have no right to rule the Egypt, the two lands of Egypt, because they belong to Amun, and you are not the legitimate son of Amun. You have no right. So he goes, and suddenly he brings, who is Amun? And he applies the same thing as well as if man has two dimensions, he looked at the cosmos itself, the universe, as also having two dimensions. The physical dimension and the spiritual dimension, which is called atom. You see, so he applied this, and suddenly, for the first time, we see a man with a vision. And it is that moment in history which is a unique philosophy and religion. Without Akhenaten, there was no Plato. Because Plato makes the city, the city on earth reflecting the spiritual city on heaven. This thing is just nothing to do more than what Akhenaten said. He was the first person to recognize that the universe, the cosmos has, philosophers call it mind, call it whatever it is, religious people call it spirit. But he is the one who saw that, you see. Then the third step took place a long time after the death of Tutankhamun, because the death of Tutankhamun was very important because he was killed and assassinated, and it's only late in the very early, after the Alexandrian library, after the Ptolemy ruling in the Alexandria. Now, when the Romans came to Egypt, they were not interested in Egyptian temples. They only kept the temple of Serapeum in Alexandria. The other temples they left. The people had no temples. Again, like at the time of Akhenaten, when they closed the temple. And the temple for Egypt was not just a place of worship. It was a place of festivals, place of school, the judges, the court judges, the medical. It was a whole life going around the when they closed the temples, Egyptians became very kind of lost. They felt and they were looking for a salvation kind of thing. They went to the desert at that time. This is the start of monastic worship as well, and the start of what is known as Gnostic Christianity.
And on that note, Ahmed, I think we need to wrap up because the music, we have like 1 minute before the music comes on. And so if somebody wants to get this book or some of your other books that you've written, where would be the best place for them to go?
It's through Amazon, of course, or through, I mean, all the bookshops in America has my book. I mean, you can get it, Amazon is or through the publisher, Inner Traditions.
Inner Traditions? Okay.
But through Amazon is now all over the place. So
I know. And they have the best prices, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, Amazon has the best price, yes.
Uh-huh.
They always have discounts and so on.
Anyway, it has been a pleasure. I feel like I've learned a lot tonight having you on the show, and so we'll have to have you back to talk about one of your other books, because I know you have several that looked really interesting to me.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'd be very glad to talk to you anytime you like. Okay,
great. Well, I'm going to let you go, and we will talk again soon, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Ahmed Osman. His book is The Lost City of Exodus. His webpage is ahmedosman.com. And next week, we're speaking to Catherine Andrews about 6 paths to finding your life purpose. And in the second hour with Dr. Eric Pearl about the reconnection continues. And so until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser